Hello, P5 students! Welcome again to our science class with Ms. Ida. We are now on Unit 3, Lesson B, What is Pollination? Let's get our Science Pupils book and open it on pages 57 to 62 while watching this video. So what are you waiting for? Let's get started! Our learning outcomes are the following. Recognize that the flowers of some plants are pollinated by insects. Recognize the process of pollination, fertilization, seed production, seed dispersal, and germination involved in the reproduction of flowering plants. To get started, for flowering plants to reproduce, pollen grains must be transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower. How can this transfer of pollen grains take place since plants cannot move from place to place? Let's try to find out. What is pollination? Pollination is the act of transferring pollen grains from the male anther of a flower to the female stigma of the same flower or another flower. What is a pollen? Pollen is a fine powder made up of small pollen grains. Pollen can be carried by wind or animals such as insects, birds and bats from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same or different flower. Look at the two kinds of flowers in this picture. Why is one kind of flower pollinated by wind? Why is the other kind pollinated by insects? Pollination by wind. Flowers are pollinated by wind, usually have small, dull-colored petals or no petals and are unscented. This is because they do not need to attract insects for pollination. Instead, they produce many tiny and light pollen grains that can be easily carried by wind to the stigmas of other flowers. Pollination by insects. Flowers pollinated by insects usually have colored petals, a nice scent, and a sugary liquid nectar to attract insects. They may have sticky or spiky pollen grains that can stick onto the bodies of insects. Insects such as bees, butterflies, moths, and wasps are important pollinators. Insects visit flowers to get pollen or nectar to feed themselves or their young. The pollen may stick onto their body when they brush against the anther. The pollen on their bodies may then land on the stigma of the same flower or another flower. Not all insect-pollinated flowers have a nice scent. These pictures show flowers that smell like rotting flesh. The rotting smell attracts flies and beetles which feed on rotting flesh and animal dung. These insects help to pollinate the flowers. So we have here the Titan arum plant and the Rafflesia plant. In going further, some plants produce a lot of pollen during certain seasons. Some people are sensitive to the pollen. The large amounts of pollen released into the air can cause them to sneeze and have runny nose and itchy eyes. So for Lesson B, we have learned that pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of some flower or another flower. Flowers may be pollinated by wind or animals such as insects. Wind-pollinated flowers usually have small, dull-colored petals or no petals and are unscented. They produce many tiny and light pollen grains which can be easily carried by wind. Insect-pollinated flowers are usually have colorful petals, a nice scent, and nectar. They produce sticky or spicy grains which can stick onto the bodies of insects. And that ends our Lesson B, children. Thanks for watching. Be ready and be on time to join our Zoom meeting. Ms. Ida will discuss more about this lesson. So take care and be safe always at home, P5 students. Bye-bye and God bless. See you on the next video.